Welcome back to the Charlotte FC podcast. Today we're joined by midfielder Eryk Williamson, who's had a remarkable journey from Alexandria, Virginia, to Portland, to Portugal, back to Portland, and now to Charlotte. In this conversation, Eryk takes us through the places and people that shaped him, his family, his mentors, his battles with injuries, and the culture that's kept him grounded. We also dive into his personal style, sneaker collection, and what's life like in Charlotte has been so far for him, both on and off the pitch. And we talk about his dog. It's time for the Charlotte FC podcast. Welcome to the Charlotte FC podcast, Eryk. You've had a fascinating journey. Started in Alexandria, Virginia, did some time in Portland, then Portugal, then back to Portland, now here in Charlotte. So I want to kind of talk through some of these places because I feel like places are an easy way for us to look at how things change and environments change and how we feel about them and what happened in those times. Because it kind of makes a bigger story looking at all those chapters.
Right.
Also, lots of moments, lots of people, lots of great stories and challenges that have shaped who you are today on and off the pitch. Before that, I really like your style. So I always see on your Instagram, your pictures and stuff like that. And it sounds like it started at a young age. So what influences how you dress?
Yeah, I think, coming from the DMV area, it's one where, you grow up with many different cultures and different, styles and backgrounds that it kind of ultimately shaped my style. I think growing up, it was a lot of soccer focus. I wore, total 90 shoes or indoor shoes to school because I knew PE comes around and, you are playing in these shoes. But then kind of the older I got, it was more, you look at the prices of a football boot, so it was more of getting football boots rather than, shoes and different clothing. And I think once I became a professional, I was used to this style of, kind of wearing stuff that's cozy and comfortable. And funny enough, there's a guy, Eryk Williamson, who really got on me my first year in Portland. And I wore Nike tracksuits every day to training. I never owned a proper pair of jeans. It was everything with, cuts and slits and anything in between that. He really got on me and said, kind of find my style and invited me into this kind of shoe culture community, I would kind of say.
You and Kalina got a little battle there. He's a shoe guy too.
Yeah, and, last game I was, joking with him with his shoes, and he's like, I'm really into shoes, and we kind of started that conversation. But yeah, Eryk's one who, being in Oregon, being around Nike, was able to, get to campus and see some cool collabs and some cool shoes and everything there that started to shape my style. And, at first it was just a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and then it was, how can you elevate that? And then, there's guys, Laurice Mabiala, Bill, when I was in Portland, they started elevating their style, and it made me kind of get out of my comfort zone. I instead of wearing the t-shirt and jeans, it's, can I put on a jacket? Can I try a piece of clothing that I wouldn't wear normally before? And just kind of taking that into my own style and creativity. And I think now kind of shaped me to who I am. You look at guys on the team here, there's a lot of guys who have good style as well. You look at Wolf, you look at Bill, you look at Jaquil, some of these guys, Adil, Didi, they come into the game, and everyone, to an extent, it allows them to show their personality and their style. And I think that's ultimately what I have liked about myself, is being able to grow. I think going out to Portland at a young age, you're forced to grow up. And again, I was so comfortable with, showing up in Nike tracksuits or, sandals to training, and guys push you out of that comfort zone to ultimately, grow up and have your own style.
So when you moved here, how many did your shoes just put them all in one big bin? Because you got almost like a room full of them, right?
Yeah, have a room full, and I think that's where even moving, there was a few things I really cared about. I'm into plants. It was a plant. It was my dog, and it was my shoes. I think it was getting upwards of 100 pairs that I wanted to cycle through. And again, as a kid, I was I wanted this pair of Jordans, or I wanted this, Nike skateboarding shoe or something. Couldn't get them because I'd much rather get a pair of soccer cleats. It was one or the other. And I think now, being able to work with Nike a little bit, it's been good to, grow that. And now it's becoming a collectible, and the little kid in me is coming out. It's, I go into shoe stores sometimes just to look around, and it's, again, like a kid in a candy store, and go in there and pick out a shoe. And I think now it's there's so many different ways to play a pair of shoes. It could be the statement piece, it could be a highlight, it could be casual, pair of Air Forces. And again, it's trying to push it onto guys here as well and challenge our young guys to find their style and personality as well, because I think it's a beautiful thing when it comes out.
Yeah. Do you see you have like a deal with Nike?
Yeah, I've worked with Nike since being a professional. I think, going to Maryland, I was at Under Armour, so it was a few years of, DC United Academy, and the academy was all Adidas. Then you go to Maryland, it's all Under Armour. Then as a professional, it's been mostly Nike, and, it was a dream of mine to work with them, and I've been lucky enough to work with them for the last 7 years.
Awesome. So speaking of growing up, you have some siblings, but they played all sports, I hear, but you were just focused on soccer. Was it just because you wanted to find your niche, or that was what you were good at?
Yeah, my oldest brother, he played every sport under the sun, and when I was born, he was playing soccer. He was out there with my mom with the Soccer for Dummies book, and my mom's out there, flipping through the pages. Okay, this is this. Right. So then when I got to the time of running, my sister was playing. She played with essentially the guy I call Dad now is my soccer coach growing up. He took me under the wing. I played with his son from before I could even remember to, now, they're coming out to games here and everything in between. And I played basketball. I didn't have the height for basketball, but my mom played. So it's one of those where, you have similar attributes in basketball. You have the defending, you have the, creativity aspect of it. There's a technique of shooting, little things there. It was just hard when, you go to the basket and guys are 6'6" and blocking shots. So ultimately, I think come middle school, I had to make the decision if it was either soccer or basketball, and I'm happy with my decision, because for as much as I loved basketball and my mom's love for the game, it was ultimately soccer that I never wanted to miss a training session. If I had one at 4:30 and one at 6:30, I'm going to both. It was making sure that I never miss a day of training, and ultimately led me to my goal and dream of being a professional.
Cool. Did your mom play professional?
No, my mom stopped playing. She stopped playing basketball probably right after high school, when she had my oldest brother. She was like, what, I think it's motherhood rather than right. Going off to school. So,
right. Well, you went to high school in Alexandria, Virginia. T.C. Williams was called then. That's the Titans school, if you watch the movie. But I know in the Northern Virginia area, from that area, soccer and the academies and stuff are really big. The high school stuff, not so much. And just, that's kind of where everybody has gone anyway eventually. But what kind of sticks out to you from that time before you kind of ended in going into Maryland and the DC Academy, like that sticks out of how you play and how you approach life?
Yeah, I think, honestly, you go to a school with so much history of the football team, and it's a really diverse culture. I think it made a really creative and interesting soccer team. And ultimately, when you walk into their atrium area or their rotunda area is what we called it, had big and gold letters, remember the Titans. And I remember being in high school, our soccer coach would always say, leave your history here, leave your legacy here. And, being able to win a state championship with TC or Inner City now was good, because it was the first and only state championship we've ever won, and was able to do that before having to go to academy. So it was a little bit of, I have guys from that team that I still text to this day that ultimately are my best friends, to say the least. And, having that shape me kind of, it was one of those, as I said, it was soccer practice right after school, and then it was going to club practice right after. It allowed you to do both club and high school. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just added that extra bit of training, to say the least. And two different teams, but one where, as a freshman, I made the varsity team, and it was, cool to be the young guy. My older brother was on the team, and I was just, the one everyone protected. And then the older you got, it was more you take a bigger role. And I think my junior year, when we won the state championship, I was a captain. So it was, a different role, and kind of growing into that role was good. But ultimately, being able to leave history, I think last year I actually was entered the Hall of Fame there.
Oh, wow.
Which was cool. I wasn't able to accept the award, but I think it's such a decorated school. Noah Lyles went to school there. There's, quite a few players who went professionally, I know, also made it out, but it's one where it's cool to kind of go back and look at, their Remember the Titans, seeing everything from the movie, but at the same time, you look on the other side of the soccer area, having my little section where it's, you see the district championships and the state championship trophy.
You made your own history.
Right, exactly.
Cool. So growing up there and just family, like you said, what are some things that you can feel like either from your siblings or your mom or whoever else you talked about, who you call dad now, your kind of coach? What is something that you're like, look back and be like, that's kind of what I learned from this time period?
Yeah, I think there were quite a few. There was, days where it was hard to, miss out on the high school things of, okay, hey, I want to go to homecoming, or hey, I want to go to a football game, and it's like you never being able to go. And it was one of those where, for as much as I was upset about it, it was one I knew the goal at the end of the day was ultimately to become a professional soccer player. Did I think I was going to at the time? No, but it was still chasing that dream. And I think I look at that every day and know that, on the hard days of, say you lose a game or you've had a bad game, it's waking up the next day and knowing, what, I've actually got to the point where I want to be and, improve from there and not just take it for granted. I think through injuries, through everything with my childhood, it was good to kind of make it professionally, but it's one of those that, never want to take a day for granted. And ultimately, that one day it could all be over as well. So it's just kind of taking it day by day and not, looking too much into the future or looking too much into the past and kind of just, everything from those training sessions I didn't want to go to or those events I missed, that at the end of the day, this was what the reward was.
So did you realize or just know somehow, like, I'm on this professional track? Like, were there individuals from the outside or like, you got these things that nobody else has, that you can make it? Like, how did that come about? Because everybody always wants to be this,
right?
But there's a fine line between wanting to do it and having the skills and being able to commit to it.
Yeah, I think everyone around me did a good job of keeping my head on my shoulders, but at the same time pushing me to always do more. There was a point where they had training camps, kind of like national team training camps in the area. It wasn't the full national team, but it was just little training sessions. It would be a Thursday night at 8 o'clock, and you look at some of the top players in the area, they're now at these ID camps kind of ordeal. And I remember talking to one of the local scouts, and he's like, look, we'd love to have you in with the national team, but I think, maybe take a next step in trying to go academy. And at that time, it was kind of, academy was the main way into the youth national teams. And I was like, okay, sure, like I'll make the jump. It was hard, again, leaving friends and guys I still talk to this day from club teams to make that jump. And then you make that jump into an MLS academy, and it's like, okay, well, hey, like now I'm getting a little closer. And it's, hey, I'm getting a text from our coach to go train with the first team, and now you see the real professionals, and then now you're seeing the likes of Bobby Boswell and Chris Rolfe and Eddie Johnson, some of these big guys that you're idolizing on TV, idolizing, across the fence on the training ground. And it's, once I started to get in with them, it started to feel maybe I'm a little closer than I think. And it still was never, hey, you're going to be a professional one day. It was just taking those steps and like, okay, hey, can I make my mark today? Hey, can I be a good person in training? Could I be one of the best players in training? And then the more and more you're around, it was maybe the summer after my freshman year of college is when I kind of reality somewhat set in of, maybe I'm closer than I think, and continue to push, and then start getting at the U20 national team and everything there. And that was kind of my moment where I started to realize it. I think getting an offer after my second year at Maryland was, kind of the icing on the cake of like, okay, hey, here's my first professional contract, but also not jumping on the first opportunity as well, because it all had to make sense too. My mom always wanted me to finish school, and I promised her still to this day that I'll go back. Being closer to home now, it's, she's pushing me even more. But yeah, exactly. So it was really good, but at the same time, there's no moment of like, hey, I scored 3 goals, I know I'm going to be a professional. It was just, the day in, day out of being with the first team and being in a professional environment of, okay, maybe I am a little closer than I think.
Yeah. Now, I've heard that I don't know if this is your opinion, but people feel like you may have been slighted by DC, and that, you thought you were going to be like a part of their thing, and then since they weren't like moving you forward off to Portland, how did that happen? What is your take on all that?
In my personal opinion, I think it was, you look at the midfield group that DC United had when I was coming out of school, it was going to be a tough one to break into, and I think in everyone's best interest, it was, okay, what is the best way to get me into a first team? And working with my agent, now, and talking with the technical staff there at the club, it was, okay, what makes the most sense? Do I go in and am I waiting 2 years? Because you have guys still in the league now. You have Ian Harkes, you have Chris Durkin, you have all these guys who have signed either the year before me or 2 years before me, and now they've been a professional for 2 years. They know the day in, day outs of being a professional. And it wasn't, by no means was it taking an easy route, but it was more of now it's getting out of my comfort zone as well of, can I go out to Portland and grow up, because I was 45 minutes from home, being at Maryland. I was always, I never had to go to a residency, anything there. It was always comfortable being close to home. If I needed anything, I can call my mom, kind of ordeal. So it was one of those that I think just made the most sense. For me, it was a little nerve-wracking because I wanted to get into preseason right away, but we took our time on both sides of them having the best deal for them, but at the same time for me. And I think the way things played out, it played out perfectly in my opinion, to go out there and grow up. I was with guys that was with the youth national team, or guys that I still call every day if I need advice. Guys like Bill, where first conversation I had in Oregon was with him. So, no, it was good. I think no part of it was personal by any means, but it was, at the end of the day, I'm happy that we were able to resolve something, and it allowed my career to take the next step.
Sounds like it was a little more mutual than what other people may have.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you look at the talent in the DMV area, whether it was me or Jeremy Abobasi is a perfect example. He's one where he came out of the same area, never actually played in the academy, but entered the draft and ended up also in Oregon. So a lot of local talent,
So you get to Portland, you're on Portland 2 team right away. Big jacket, you're living by yourself, of course, far away. That probably has its own challenges. But you eventually do a pit stop in Portugal, which I'm going to play something for you later that I had somebody record. But you do the pit stop in Portugal, and you come back and play for Portland, I believe in the MLS back tournament thing in Orlando. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where you started to make your mark and be kind of recognizable at the first team. Can you walk through some things at Portland that really made your career or changed the trajectory?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, going out there 2018, the first 6 months was, I don't want to say it was living a good life, but I'm in terms of, in retrospect, to Portugal. So I'm in Oregon, I'm playing with the second team. We have facilities, we have AC, we have everything. The field's perfect, the balls are perfectly pumped. You're not worried about rain. If it is raining, the field can deal with it. And then I go out to Portugal, and it almost is the complete opposite. I'm now not speaking the language. I don't have friends. I don't have a car. I don't have phone service. If I wanted to call a taxi, I had to rely on a teammate to call a taxi. So little things that you take for granted in the U.S., you kind of miss there. But I think the style of play also is one of those moments that forces you to grow up. Now I'm forced to learn a language I don't know. I'm forced to, interact with players that are from a completely different culture, that know nothing about me, that, with all due respect, don't care about, where I've come from. They are worried about what I'm doing in training that day. And it forces you to, okay, look, now I know if I go home and I cry myself to sleep for the next week, they're not going to care. If I go home and I play video games from 2 o'clock until 8:30 at night, and then I eat dinner, they're not going to worry about that. They're just worried about what I'm doing on the field. So it forced me to now realize that everything that is off the field, to an extent, is a distraction. Just show up and do what you need to do on the field. Ultimately didn't make an appearance, but then it's you go back to Portland and it's you know what, I'm going to take that same mentality and bring it here. So going into 2019, it was, now I'm getting into the second team. I'm, forcing my way in somewhere with the first team, make my debut in the middle of 2019. And then it was a couple games playing at home in 2019. Full circle moment. My second start in the league was against DC United at home in Portland. And it was, I still to this day have a picture standing next to Wayne Rooney, and it's, again, one of those big moments of this is my brother's favorite player, and how do I, do I ask for a jersey? Okay, he's not going to know who I am. It's one of those things that, full circle moment. And then MLS is back. It's one where now you're taking another step. You're now in your third year of a pro. You have no excuse to say, okay, I'm the young kid anymore. You go in and just do essentially your job and make sure that you're winning games. And I think if you do those two things, it ultimately will lead you in the right direction. And I had good pieces around me. I had both Diegos next to me that arguably, Diego Chara, Diego Valeri, it's arguably two of the best, players in the league in their positions. And, being able to learn from them just some of the nonverbal, some of the verbal things of like, I make a mistake, they look at me and they're like, who cares, keep going, And I think that mentality allowed me to grow the confidence to play with them, play with, pieces where if Diego Valeri was out, can I step into a different role? If Diego Chara was out, can I step into a different role? And I think that evolved my game a little bit to be able to play, in any of the positions in the midfield. And then it's, can you play somewhere else? Can you do this? Can you take on this role? That ultimately led me to, coming here, and it's one where we play such a flexible style of, sometimes it's a 6-6, sometimes it's 1-6, sometimes it's as a 10, taking all of those moments and experiences and bringing it to, different clubs and different moments that needed in this year. And you look at, not starting as much, but being able to play a different role and know that at the end of the day, it's all a similar goal. And I think that's the mentality we had in Oregon when I'm just getting the first appearance or the second appearance. It's now, how can I come in and make my mark, whether it's starting a game or coming on for 30 seconds if needed.
Yeah. You coming here, of course, you also got to play with Evander too. So I think everybody's game elevates when you play with people that are at a higher level or, are outstanding, and you're like, oh, I can learn from, just little angles like you were talking about, little things that you can do, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. But so when you come over here, you got Miles Joseph again, and I don't know if he had any part of getting you over here, because obviously he's probably a big fan of yours. But can you walk me through how that relationship with Miles is, and if there's not something bigger than just, hey, he was coach for a little bit and didn't concentrate, or is there something else that kind of connected you here?
Yeah, I think Miles here plays a similar role than what he did in Oregon. He was one where he took one with some of the young guys and, gave his advice when needed. And I think from probably 2019, maybe getting into 2020, the conversations we had, I think ultimately evolved my games in the best ways. It's things I'm not thinking about that he sees, his experiences. And I think it's, hey, look, on this side of the ball, you need to do this. On this side of the ball, you need to do that. And I think there's many moments that stick out, but it's, you get hurt. Miles was the first one that, just sending me a text and say, hey, keep your head up, keep going. And it's that confidence he instills in me and some of the guys you see in this locker room goes a long way. And it ultimately, our conversation was one of the last ones we had. Going into the offseason last year, I think I actually texted him for a conversation because I don't know how much he knew about it, but I was really interested in coming here. And I was like, Miles, I just want to pick your brain, whether I do it or not. What are your thoughts on the club and everything? And I want to say we sat down for at least 4 hours and we've talked about, on the field stuff, off the field stuff. He said if I needed to live with him, I could live with him, little things like that, really made me feel welcome, not only here at the club, but in every aspect of his life as well. And I think whether things are going right or wrong, he's one of the guys that I'll always pick his brain because he's coached some of the best players. He's coached Evander. He helped Evander shine in moments where I believe it was 2023 when he took over for a little bit. And
yeah, stellar record.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes to show, he's such a good coach and he's able to bring the best out of people. And I was one where I was like, you know what, I think it's taking that step to come here and getting the best out of me here. And it's been good. I think he's been one in my corner, whether it's good or bad, that I'm able to get positive, real feedback from. And it's a relationship I don't think you can have with many people. And yeah, I'm close with his family. I think his wife is one that he, whenever she comes to visit, it's like seeing like a second mom, almost. So it's been good. I know his son went to Indiana, but, we don't take that personally. It's just more, he's a good guy. And whenever he's in town, I always try to, catch up with him as well.
That's awesome. Now, you said you wanted to come here. Was there a reason you were like looking at Charlotte and you were like, hey, this could be a spot for me?
Yeah, I think, if you look at last year of when Portland played here, it was one where I remember from the moment we stepped on the field, I was like, okay, this is not only an atmosphere, but like a team and an environment that felt like all together. You know, it was one where you look at the back end of Oregon, there's so much turnover. It felt like a different culture, and it was, maybe it's time to take another step in my career. And then, yeah, after that game, it was one I remember calling Bill. I was like, is it like that every game? And he's like, bro, I don't know how to put words on it, but it's one where everyone feels uncomfortable here.
It's not even locker room talk.
Exactly. That's just yeah, exactly. And then he's like, it's a great locker room. We're one where we all talk. You look at even days like today, we're all in there messing around, joking around about anything and everything. We've found out middle names today, which has its own banter, but it's good because it's a culture you want to be around, and it makes you wake up every day and be like, oh, you know what, I'm living the dream. And, being here, we've had our ups and downs. You look at our streak right now, it's amazing, but you look at when we were rough and no one put their head down, no one was pointing fingers. It was, we're going to get ourselves out of this. And that's ultimately what I wanted. I didn't want to go somewhere where it's 11 individuals on the field. It's a team, a club from top to bottom, and you look at, again, some of the worst days, and everyone's like, we'll get through this. And yeah, I think that is ultimately one of my best decisions. And I obviously, hindsight's 2020. I didn't think you would go through a rough patch, but it really showed that you can honestly trust some of the stuff that Bill had said, but had Miles had said as well. And then talking to Dean before, he said, this is the culture he's brought and instilled within the club.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Would you rather play for, even though like right now, you're still battling and you're not like, hey, I'm a first team player all the time. Would you rather play for a team in a culture like this than being like knowing that you're going to a place that might not have that culture, but you're going to be on the field all the time?
For sure. I definitely want to be in somewhere where we're winning and we're competing for trophies. And, I actually forgot that piece because that was the biggest thing as well. As you look at the playoff run last year, it was something missing. Not saying that we can put a finger on exactly what was missing, but it's like, if I can add my quality and depth or whatever I can bring to this team to help elevate the team, I think, it would help us take another step in that right direction. And for me, it's one where I never want to be on a team that, we're competing for the wooden spoon and we're just out there just to say we got an appearance. I think it's one where I want to be upset that we lose a game, and even if it's a game that means nothing, it's one where we want to win every game. And honestly, every trophy, you look at how we've been knocked out this year, and it's been, a punch in the face to all of us, but it's all like, at the end of the day, we still have, Supporters Shield you can still chase, and then you have MLS Cup that, is on the back end of that. So it's not taking, one loss and holding our heads down and keeping our heads down. It's more of look at the bigger picture. We can compete for at least 3 or 4 trophies. And again, the way we were knocked out, it wasn't like we were getting played off the field. It was, you look at DC, you lose in PKs. You look at Leagues Cup, if things go a different way, we're in the conversation. So, yeah, I've always been someone where it's cool to be on the field for a losing team, but I'd much rather fight for a spot on a championship team every day of the week.
And a team that has a good culture, too. You want to be around it.
Exactly, and not a toxic workplace where everyone's legitimately fighting. We're fighting in the healthiest ways. It's, you kick me, I kick you a little harder, and we both shake hands after because we know we want the best for each other. So,
yeah. No, I can't skip over the fact that you've come back from 2 ACLs.
Mm-hmm.
The first almost 4 years ago today, I think, or within that, both at points when you were really hitting your stride,
mm-hmm.
which has got to be tough because you're in the mix of the U.S. national team discussion and playing for them and being thought of as, hey, this could be a starting person on this squad. And then just also the whole physical and mental recovery of all that. It takes months to a year to do that. And the broadcaster who used to cover Portland, Ross Smith, is now at MLS. He covered one of the last games here. I had him talk a little bit about you, so that's why I'm going to play for you. Just want you to hear this.
Eryk, as a person, as I was telling you last night, I think it was Portugal, but I think that was really neat. That that sort of that experience for him and what it did for him, because it just wasn't working out in Portland to make the jump to the first team. He was playing in the second team, and Cameron Knowles was his coach, who's the assistant at Minnesota United now. And Cameron was big on Eryk. Cameron was saying he is going to be a player. And I wasn't watching T2 at the time, but chatting to Cam, and he kept saying how good Eryk was, and I think Eryk was just a standout. But he just couldn't get that jump, and so he was sent across to Portugal. I forget which order it went, whether he went to Portugal, came back to the Timbers second team, or he was Timbers second team and then went to Portugal. But I felt like that made a difference. And when I saw him at MLS Cup, when we were having a few drinks in the bar afterwards, that whole experience, it just felt like he was like, I'm done with that. I'm not going to let my opportunity, if they bring me back here, to let it slip through. And so when he got that chance, it started to work for him. And it was tough to see at times, because he isn't the player that is going to come in and all of a sudden just blind you with wonderful skill. And he can kind of drift, which is a bit of a hit on him, I feel like. If the game comes to him, great. If it doesn't, then that's okay, which I felt a bit like last night. When the moments came his way, he looked sharp, but then he would go missing. That's my kind of hit on him a little bit. But if you're getting him on the ball and you're getting him going, then he, the way that he can cut through the midfield, the way he finds little passes around the corner to create openings, it's different. I remember there was a time I did an Instagram video, live video with him. It was during COVID, and we were starting to compare him a bit to Nagbe. Nagbe with a bit more of a thirst in the final third to create and to gamble and to do things. And I think if you look at it, he had a goal against Seattle in Seattle, and that's actually where he tore at least one of his ACLs.
Yeah.
But he had a goal where he's just driven right through the middle of the park, and he's hit it from distance, and it was tremendous. And it was like, wow, that is it's like against their rival from Portland. It was like this is their guy for the future. And then when he did his ACL, came back, he got to the point where you were saying that again. And but I remember it wasn't long. He was playing at a high level again after his first ACL. A high level again when we were saying, okay, he's back, and then he tore it again, which was heartbreaking. But that goal from Seattle always stands out in my mind. That it was different than any other midfielder in the league to what you saw. But lovely guy.
Yeah, some great moments, I think. Ross, great guy. I remember Atlanta thoroughly. It was one where I came back, and it's the first stop. They got me back from the loan early, and it was one where, as he said, like, it was one of those moments where I knew Portugal was behind me, and it's okay, how can I show up next year? How can I make my mark next year? And then, through it all, it was one I think Ross actually did when I re-signed in Portland, he did kind of like a analysis video on me, and I think still to this day, if I'm ever feeling down, it's actually one I go back and watch, because it highlights different points of my game, and it kind of adds that confidence of like, you know what, you can do this. And I think, as he said, coming back from the first ACL was 4 years ago, almost around this time, came back in 7 months. It was a quick turnaround, but you had the confidence of everyone at the club, everyone around me, just to kind of go out there and show what you can do. And I think it came back flying. As you said, it's now you're at the top of arguably your game again and trying to get into the national team. Not making the World Cup, or I think it was a fitness camp right before the World Cup, was kind of that a moment of disappointment. But again, I think it's one where you come back from. You go into 2023 and, you going into January camp, got called into US, Mexico, and Arizona, and that week ended up doing my ACL again. And it's one where it was so heartbreaking. I think the second one hurt a little more than the first, because I actually didn't know I tore the second one. I played a full game actually on a torn ACL. Yeah. And 90-minute game, thought it was good. My agent sent me a text, hey, one of your better games. I think you'll get called into this camp. Found out on Tuesday I was going into camp. Wednesday, did the MRI and had texted them, hey, I want to fly in and out of Oregon, everything there. And Yeah, it was one of those moments. That one was a little bit more of like a longer process. That one was essentially the whole season. I think I played 6 games that year.
I mean, everything has to regrow over, right?
Regrow, yeah, exactly. And then you're getting into the confidence of now you're in preseason, and instead of it being like chasing a moving target with now I'm getting games in, I can play 20 minutes here, you're now 10 months out and you're, okay, now I have to work through preseason. Everyone's, essentially working in and around the same. You look at last year was an up and down year as well of, some games were good and some games not so good, some games starting, some games not starting. And I think you look at
feeling okay? Like, does it
feel amazing? I think especially this year, coming into this year, I felt better than I felt coming back from my first ACL. It's just more so now it's a different way of being healthy. When I came back from first ACL, I think I was picking up injuries left and right. Last year was okay, like, hey, can I do the right things to make sure everything's good to go, everything's stable, so that coming into this year, trying to stay away from any hiccups and, again, doing the right things, but also adjusting to now a new style of play, a new team, and everything there. And I think, as Ross said, there's moments where you feel confident and you feel like, everything's good again, everything's great, and then there's a moment of not getting on the ball and feeling like distant from the game. But I think that's one that just comes with time. It's easy to say it comes with consistent games, but at the same time, it could be 2 games and then have a rough game, and it's just kind of getting that consistency back. As one of our conversations I had with Gio Savarese in Portland was, making sure the games are consistent. Cam with the second team at Minnesota, even every time we play Minnesota, it's that conversation. He allowed me to find my game, find my confidence of early in the game. Maybe it's a little more simple. Later in the game, you can take a little more risk and ultimately play full 90s. And then when you kind of get into full 90s, then it's, can you elevate your game every single game and consistently do it? And I think with all that said, bringing that here is like, okay, now I know this is the role or this is the situation. Going to Red Bull is never going to be easy. Going to Kansas and playing in Kansas is never going to be easy. And it's like, can I bring my experiences and my quality into those games? And you look at some of those moments of those games, I think it felt and looked like I was myself again.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's, making sure that's consistently, for 90 minutes. And I think a lot of that comes with time and being on the field. And it's just one, how can I do the things behind the scenes to make sure that it's good for, if it's 15 minutes, if it's 72 minutes and it's for 72 minutes. So it's just, again, going back to the little things and doing the little things. And, Dean instills confidence in all of us to make sure that we're ready to go come match day. But at the same time, you never know what the games brings. And it's games where I think I'm going to go in and play a big role and, exactly. Or teams playing unreal and it's, look, you don't change this. If it's not broken, don't fix it kind of ordeal. And there's been a lot of moments that year where I'm looking and it's like, wow, like it's going to be hard to break in this team, but I'm going to continue to push the guys in my position and make sure that, they know that I want to be here and fight and be in the position they're in just as much as they're in them. And I think, again, the midfield group I've talked about multiple times, we have such a healthy battle that it honestly makes it fun. In training, if someone has a good day and, someone else doesn't have such a good day, we can all still bring each other up and not bring anyone down by any means. And again, it's just been such a fun year, and it's good that, we're hitting the ground running right now and then continuing that until the rest of the year.
I mean, your mental approach is amazing. Battling those injuries, coming to a new place where you're battling to get back into that. And like you said, it's almost like a catch-22. You don't get the minutes, can't show, but then you show in the training. Like, what is it that you feel like you need to really take to another level, maybe on the training, so that you do get the more of the minutes?
Yeah, I think it's just continuing to influence the game and influencing the ball, to say the least. I know that, as Ross said too, there's been, being able to, if guys are pressing me, and this is where I try to, have a similar game to Nagby where people say he's unpressable, and it's like, can I bring those moments into training sessions? Can I do it in games? And I think with all of that to be said, there's risk in it as well. And it's, one, taking those risks in the right moments, but at the same time in the right places. I think he's one where he knows his game, and fortunate enough for him, he's continuing to play at a high level. And it's, for me, can I take that into my game and bring that into training? If we're doing possession, can I get on the ball the most? If we're doing 11v11, like how can I get on the ball and affect the game in a positive way? And I think there's moments this year where you really feel that, and there's moments in training where it's, guys like, Eryk, you must have slept really well last night, and it's like, no, it's just, like I know I have little goals and little challenges for myself in training. Can I be on the ball the most? Can I have the most passes? Can I score today? Like little moments that.
Is that just like an inner voice, or do you have like things you write down?
Inner voice. I would definitely say inner voice, because with games, sometimes trainings, we aren't doing exactly what I think we're going to do. And every training session is different. Every game is going to be different. The way we prepare for Red Bull is going to be different. How we prepare for like in Orlando, and I think little moments and mental cues like that are where it's okay. Like, hey, can I get better at doing this? Can I switch the ball the fastest? Am I going to be the one to make the final pass? Can I score the goal today? Just little things. And again, I think it comes with different positions. If I think mentally, okay, going into this game, I'll play as a 10, and the game I'm playing is kind of a deeper role, then everything that I had planned essentially changes. So it's like, can you make that little small mental note of, okay, actually this is going to be the goal for today.
Right. This is where you need to focus based on how you need to play for you're being asked to.
Right.
Off the pitch, you've had some fun things you've done. Kind of did your playful side with the William Erickson.
Yep.
I think that's on the cover. You did the interview that was with the Thorns. Then you did the interview with Trey from the Orioles.
Yep. Yep.
So, like, you seem to like to do that. You did a thing in the summer with Bronico and stuff like that.
Right.
So you seem to like those kind of things. Is there something about that? Do you ask? You're like, hey, I'll volunteer?
No, actually, funny enough, if you ask some of our media side, I actually hate being in front of camera. I hate mostly, I would not say the attention, but like if they ask me to do something, I'll do it. Especially with Brant, it's one where we have a special relationship where every time we see each other, no matter how good or bad, it's somehow there's a joke being made on whatever else it is. So it's, little moments like that feel natural and candid and not forced. But at the same time, some of the other interview stuff was, fun and playful. I think it was. The Trey interview was great because, a local guy playing for the Orioles was like everything made sense there. It was a really cool, unique interview. The William Erickson, we actually came up with probably the day of, if not two days before. It was just and I think the men's and women's team in Portland had such a good relationship that made it really fun and candid. And I was at every single game. They knew I was there, and it was funny enough that they didn't notice it was me. Obviously, some of them did, but they're like, Eryk, what are you doing here? I think it's a different situation if I don't know them as personally, but it's cool. I think, I'm big for mic'd up moments because I think there's a funny side to me that comes out naturally. And I think if you asked me to record a segment today in training, it wouldn't be as candid and natural, but it's like little mic'd up moments where if no one knew some of the comments and jokes that people say. Exactly. And they all make fun of my middle name because Eryk Williamson is just kind of like I don't want to call it a basic name, but then you add Tyreek into it and they're like, oh, where did Tyreek come from? And it's the way my mom spelled it as well is a little unique. And, obviously these guys are cracking jokes about it and calling me Tyreek now in the locker room, a little thing. So, no, it just makes it fun. And, again, I think it just shows that, usually when I'm around a group that is this close knit, it makes it fun and natural. And guys even gave me a hard time. I still have the water gun in my locker, and guys will come grab it and shoot it around a little bit.
So you got to tell me about Tyreek now. You open it up.
Oh, I actually don't know. My mom just the name she liked, and it popped up. But you can spell Tyreek with all the letters of my first name. That's all. You just add a T to it. So
your first name's unique too.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't surprise me. Coming back to Charlotte, what are some things that you've enjoyed most about Charlotte, and then maybe some things that surprised you that you're like, oh, this is a nice bonus?
Yeah, everyone had talked about how similar it was to Oregon in terms of everyone here loves their coffee. They love beer. They love food. There's a lot of similarities to Oregon, and I grew into coffee. I used to get black coffee and do 3 things of sugar and whole milk, and it was disgusting for, in my opinion, real coffee drinkers.
Right.
And it's I'm going to coffee shops and I'm trying all these different beans and, trying to get out to, maybe try a beer or two or something that makes Charlotte, and it gives me hints and memories of, growing up. I used to be, one where I only went to chain restaurants, and now it's trying all the local restaurants and being able to pick the brains of guys on the team of, okay, what's the best sushi in the city? And, I have 3 different answers. Okay, can I try out different sushi? What's the best steakhouse? What's the best Italian spot? And now I'm getting into, trying.
To cook? You just like to go out?
I do like to cook. It's just more so of.
Learn to cook. I think all athletes have to do that because.
Yeah, and I was one where my first 2 meals I made it actually in Portland, I was sick. I think I undercooked chicken a little bit, and I had stomach pains the next day. And I still have memories of, I posted it maybe on Instagram, like, oh, first meal I made. And surely enough, the next day I went to the doctor. So slowly got around to cooking, and it's more so of like, for example, if we have a Sunday off, can I go for a nice Sunday dinner? I'm sore, I'm tired from the game before, it's probably easier to go out. But during the week, it's easier to cook and much more, it's a lot easier to cook during the week.
Now that you're closer, does your family come more?
Family comes. They've been to, I want to say, 3 games now. My mom tried to stay for like 3 weeks, and I was like, Mom, like, you can just drive down for the games. You don't have to stay here the whole time. So it's like that I love. I didn't realize how dog friendly Charlotte was. Yeah. And with my dog, he's like the most playful, energetic dog ever. And he's like, he goes outside, he meets all these friends. And it's been really good to see and have good conversations with a lot of people about not only dogs, but just what to do. Being at like, there's a lot that I was supposed to do this summer that I didn't get to do, of Whitewater Center and, getting out to the beach and everything between. But it was like, once we got settled after all of our away trips, I was like, maybe it's time to stay at home for a few days and kick the feet up. So a lot. I think the only downside is I forgot about the humidity, and it's been kicking my butt. It's been kicking the dog's butt, and he's...
The last 2 weeks, it probably felt like Portland as far as all...
Felt amazing, and he's out jumping in puddles and doing everything between, because I feel like he misses rain a little bit. Dealt with mosquitoes in a long time, and I think I had like 40 the other night because I was out chit-chatting with one of the neighbors, and no bug spray, no anything, and it was just, and it's, so that's the only thing, I've seen as a downside so far, but missed thunderstorms, missed little things like that, and of course, knowing my dog, he doesn't really know what a thunderstorm is, so he's like, what's that noise? And goes right back to sleep. So,
is there anything that somebody doesn't know about you, or these fans might be listening, you could learn about Eryk that they don't know, that you haven't shared yet?
Ooh.
You really want them to know, and they're like, this is who I am.
I don't know. I'm an open book, and I say that. I think that, I'm a movie guy. However, I'm terrified of horror movies, so I think I could do Tyler Perry. I love a comedy movie, but like some of the like deeper, darker ones, not so much. Even a movie like Get Out terrified me. Yeah. I heard Sinners is a little scary, and I put in quotations, and it's like, I could watch it Tuesday at 2:00, but if anything past 7, it's like, I don't know, for some reason I can't get into, and it's, I think outside of that, that's me to a T.
Cool. We have a last part of our podcast, just quick answer questions.
It's stoppage time!
What's your walk-up music?
Walk-up music?
Yeah.
Oh.
Walking to...
Ooh, I don't know. Depends on the day. Today it was Bus It Baby by Piles. On a normal day, I think like a pregame walk-in song. Yeah. I would say maybe like a Gunna song, just something real mellow. Okay. Walking onto the pitch could go like old school Lil Wayne. So, yeah.
A stadium you'd love to play in, but you haven't?
Yeah, honestly, I think I've played in... Funny enough, I would love to play in RFK Stadium. Now that it's closed, I never was able to play there. Yep.
Must-do ritual before matches?
A pasta.
Okay.
Buttered noodles.
Buttered noodles flat?
Switch it up. Sometimes I can do fettuccine, sometimes it's like a bow tie, rigatoni, switch it up.
All right, if you weren't a soccer player...
Ooh, funny enough, I've recently talked about this. I'd be a sommelier. Yeah.
You've gotten into that. Was it because of the Oregon influence?
Oregon influence. I don't have the palate to be a sommelier, but I think in a different world, I'd grow a palate.
Okay.
I watched Drops of God on Apple TV,
Yeah.
and it changed. I wanted to be a sommelier after. Yeah, it's
cool.
exactly.
Favorite unplugged activity? I'm guessing just with your dog.
Just with the dog. No phone, walk outside, talk to neighbors. Yeah, off leash, let him run around and do his thing.
Yeah, they have
Maybe a little hiking.
Charlotte. There's so many places that the dogs just hang out.
I've met so many people, and it's tough to say, but I've met so many people in the neighborhood that I know the dog's name, but I don't think we got around to their name. So.
Right. All right, you have a go-to snack when you're just hanging out watching a match or something like that?
I want to say they're called Good Made. They're organic chocolate chip granola bites.
Yes, get them on the plane.
Unreal.
Is starting or finishing a project?
Ooh. Finishing. Because starting, funny enough, I'm like someone, I'll start a project and then I'd be like, oh, I'm cleaning the whiteboard. And then I'll drop something. It's like, oh, I got to vacuum. And then the whiteboard wouldn't get done. So finishing it, for sure.
Goals are nice too. Finish.
Yeah, exactly.
What retirement?
Quiet time with the dog, I'd say. No TV, everything unplugged. Just him looking at me as normal human and looking at him as my best friend.
Good one in.
Cool.
Thanks, Eryk.
No problem. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode with Eryk Williamson. From his early days to Virginia to growing up as a pro in Portland and now bringing his experience and energy to Charlotte FC, Eryk's story is one of resilience, creativity, and culture, both on the field and in life. We'll keep following his journey this season, and we can't wait to see what's next for him in Charlotte. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with more stories from the people who make Charlotte FC what it is. Enjoy your day.